Hi everyone, my name is Rachel Lennon and I'm a neurodivergent scientist working in the physics department at the University of Exeter. The 13th to the 19th of March is Neurodiversity Celebration Week, which is a time dedicated to celebrating how many amazing varieties of brains and thinking styles exist. To join in with these celebrations, I'm here to introduce you to 3 other neurodivergent researchers who all work at Exeter University. In this video, they're going to tell you about their work and how being neurodivergent has helped them to be amazing at what they do. The theme we've chosen this year for our celebration is neurodiversity and sustainability. So our 3 researchers are going to explain to you how their work is related to sustainability too. At the end of this video, we're also going to set you a creative challenge to try at school, and if you want to, you can send us pictures or videos of what you've made. During the Easter holidays, we're going to show your work on the University of Exeter website, and you'll be able to go onto the website and it'll be like looking around an exhibition where you're all the artists. So we're going to display all of your submissions on there and you'll be able to look through everything that everybody's done. Before I introduce our 3 speakers, let's talk about what we mean when we say sustainability. Sustainability means using resources wisely to meet our current needs in a way that doesn't compromise the ability for future generations to meet theirs. You might have learned about sustainability already at school and had lessons about caring for our natural environment. So you might have talked about climate change or sources of renewable energy or reducing, reusing and recycling. Maybe you've watched videos of people like Greta Thunberg, who is neurodivergent too, giving passionate speeches about caring for our planet and living sustainably. All of these things are things that we want you to draw upon and think about when we set you the creative challenge. So it's now time to meet our 3 researchers so they can tell you about how their work is related to sustainability. First up, we've got a talk from Taylor, who's going to tell us about how looking after our lakes and rivers is super important for our well-being. Then Pam is going to tell us about sustainability in the ocean. And then finally, at the end, Ian is going to give you the creative challenge. He's going to set the question for you and provide you with something to think about. So for this creative challenge, we want you to explore anything that comes to mind when you're thinking about sustainability. So it can be any of the examples from before or something completely new and different. So you can produce anything in any format that you want. So you could draw a picture, or you could make a video, you could make a Lego sculpture, you could write a letter, you could write a story, you can come up with a song, absolutely anything that you want. Whatever you want to do to express what your response is to our creative challenge. So I really hope that you're going to enjoy these talks, and I look forward to seeing what you produce during the Creative Challenge. And I'm really looking forward to seeing all of the submissions on the University of Exeter's website at Easter time.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I'm a swim researcher at the University of Exeter. As you might be able to hear and see, I'm currently bobbing around in a very, very chilly lake. It's late February, there's drizzle, there's wind. It's about 5.8 degrees today, and the reason I'm subjecting my body to that is because my research explores outdoor swimming and environmental health at Windermere, which is England's largest lake in the Lake District National Park. And you might be thinking, why on earth is Taylor doing this research? Well, first and foremost, I love swimming. The feeling of buoyancy, floating in the water, it brings me a lot of joy. But outdoor swimming in the UK and Ireland has had a huge increase in popularity over the past 10 years, and there's growing research that suggests there might be some positive health and well-being responses for some people when safely immersed in or around these open waters, and often within the comfort of friends, peers and community swim groups. Now often that research has focused on coastal spaces, so sea swimming, hence why I'm exploring Windermere, an inland body of water which attracts lots of recreational and competitive swimming across the year alongside other users including walkers, tourists, paddleboarders, kayakers, canoeists, anglers, hire boats and the Windermere Ferry. So Windermere is busy and conflicted by many different water users, residents, tourists, businesses, conservation groups, even farming. And sometimes there are social complications around access, actually getting to the lake, affording the kit needed to feel safe in the water. There are cultural differences, different abilities, different bodies, even neurodiversity. And Windermere is not only shared by humans, There's also the fish, the plants, the freshwater critters and the bird life that come and go across the season. And unfortunately, Windermere is experiencing increasing environmental pressures, including extreme weather, rising global temperatures, untreated sewage and waste entering the lake. There's also plastic pollution, invasive plant life, and even blue-green algae. There were times across the summer where the lake was green. That is an unsustainable lake. And unfortunately, these impacts together, that can impact the health and the balance of those who share Windermere, including swimmers. And it raises questions around responsibility and how we might take care of ourselves, our communities, and our shared environments. And to explore that within my research, I visit 2 popular swim spots on Windermere across all 4 seasons. I observe the interactions with the lake, the different users, the weather, the water conditions, plus I reflect on my own experiences. I also interview different swimmers, dippers, swim coaches, groups, conservationists, academics, you name it. And those interviews are often held in the water. We reflect on our personal motivations, the experiences, our senses, how we might be impacted by the different social and environmental concerns at Windermere, and what might be done to improve this. Now, being exposed in the water like I am now all year round it can be risky, so we must take care. Sometimes we choose not to go in the water at certain times or at certain parts of the lake if there is evidence of pollution. The water can also be very cold, even in the summer. And so we must make sure that we swim within our limits. We dress appropriately, we have spare warm clothes and a warm drink ready for us. We avoid swimming alone, and we take our time immersing into the water, listening to our bodies, making sure that we get out of the water long before we feel too cold. So now that I'm out of the water and I've got myself dry and warm and I've packed my kit away and double checked that there wasn't any plant life that attached itself to my swim kit, because we're trying to prevent the spread of species between different bodies of water. I've also looked after myself and got lots of layers on. I've got gloves, I've got my beanie hat, I've got a flask full of hot tea. Really trying to take care of myself. Now, care has been a central part of my research and my thinking and my approach and my methods, and care is also, for me, about being mindful of the challenges that I encounter as a neurodivergent researcher, as it can be exhausting sometimes. Now, I'm lucky that I have colleagues and peers and friends and family, the swim communities here at Windermere, and also positive routines in place to support me and my research. But ultimately, it's that passion, that attention to detail, that interest for swimming that keeps me going, alongside this potential that I might be able to help promote care and awareness for these fragile spaces, being mindful of those who share them and the different challenges that they experience. Now, swimming in a freezing cold lake might not be for you, and that's understandable. But going forward, I encourage you to find your thing and to find your why. And even just talking about your particular interest can be enough to make a difference sometimes. Now, I'm going to go and enjoy the rest of my tea, but I really look forward to meeting some of you on the 15th of April and seeing what ideas and creativities come out. In the meantime, take care.
Hi, I'm Dr. Pamela Buchan and I am a marine social scientist at Exeter University. You might not have heard of marine social science because it's quite a new research subject, but you've probably heard of marine biology. Biology is the study of living things, the plants and animals in the world, and social science is the study of the things that people do. So it's a really big subject and includes things like economics, which is about how we organise our money, and politics, which is about how we run things, particularly countries. and also law, which is the rules that people follow in the places where they live, and all of the things that people do. After school, I went to university and I studied marine biology because I really love the sea and I really love science. Like many scientists, I'm pretty worried about the environmental changes that we're experiencing today. Things like climate change, pollution, and more endangered animals are mostly caused by the things that humans do and the industries that we depend on. And that's where marine social science comes in, because that's all about how humans and the ocean affect each other. I moved away from biology and into social science because I want to change the way that we use the ocean to be more sustainable so that it will meet our needs today and for future generations. Something that's helped me make this change is that I have got ADHD, and for me, ADHD makes me really focused and passionate on the things that I'm interested in, and I'm interested in almost everything. The flip side of this is that I can get bored quite easily, and when I'm bored, I find it difficult to concentrate. As an adult, this has meant that I've changed my job quite a lot and moved around the country a little bit. So first, I studied and researched marine biology, and then I moved to work for a charity, which was all about engaging the public with science. And so I was doing lots of different kinds of science and working with volunteers. And then during that time, I did some teacher training until I became a mum. And then that job finished and I started to work for myself, and I did really different things, like I set up a business creating art from hand-sewn things themed by science, and I did social media for a company. And during that time I applied to Exeter University to do a PhD, which is a higher level degree where you research something new on a really specific topic. While I was doing my PhD, I was elected to be a councillor. This is a bit like being an MP, but instead of being in the national government, a councillor is in the local government and makes decisions about things that happen in the local area. Being a councillor was great for me because I got to do so many different things, and it was so interesting and I learnt so much, but it's also really hard work and I don't have time to do that and to do my research now, so I stopped being a councillor last year. All of these different experiences mean that I have learnt loads, and I can look at difficult problems from lots of different perspectives. One of the great things about my ADHD brain is that it helps me to piece together all the different bits of complicated problems, such as the problems of trying to create a sustainable future for society. At the moment, I'm researching something called marine citizenship. Citizenship is actually a really complicated word, and it has lots of different meanings. At its heart, it's really about the relationship between a person and the rules that control how they live. Most of the rules, though not all, are set by the national government in the country where we live. So that's why citizenship is sometimes used as meaning the country where a person is legally living. As well as responsibility to follow the rules, citizenship also means that people have rights. And rights are something that people are entitled to, and some of them are universal, which means that internationally all governments have agreed that every person should have that right. You might have heard of the right to free speech, which means that someone can say whatever it is that they believe in without fear of being imprisoned or prevented by the government, even if the government doesn't like what it is that they're saying. This is a universal right, but there are some governments in the world that do stop people from saying things that they don't want them to say. So rights aren't just given, they're also something that we fight for to make the world a fairer place. You might be wondering what this has to do with the sea. Well, one right is the right to have a say about environmental decision making, and this was agreed internationally by a law called the Rio Convention, which was agreed in the 1990s. What this means is that if there is a plan to do something that will have an impact on the environment, people have a right to share their views and for those views to be taken into consideration in the decision making. So for the ocean, if there's a plan to do something that impacts the ocean, then people have a right to have a say if they are going to be affected by those plans. So for example, imagine there's a plan to make a port bigger. The people who decide on whether or not that should happen have to listen to the views of people who live near the port and also whose businesses and livelihoods might be affected by the port being made bigger. And they also have to consider the impact that it will have on the natural environment. If a decision that is made is bad, we also have a right to environmental justice. So that puts pressure on decision makers to try and make a good decision right from the start. The big environmental changes that I mentioned earlier, like climate change, are affected by thousands of decisions, many of which aren't even considered to be environmental, and many of which people don't have any say over at all, even though climate change affects all of us. An important right that we have in the UK is the right to be involved in deciding who gets to make the big decisions for us, and that's through voting and elections. But voting is optional. So if we want to influence that, we also have a responsibility to use our vote. So marine citizenship, as well as having rights, also has responsibility to think about and take action on the impacts that we have on the ocean. And this goes all the way from individual decisions like what we do with our rubbish, right up to how we use our rights to change how we do things as a whole country. In the UK, we have lots of different ways that we can use our rights to ask decision makers to do things differently. We can write to our councillors or our MPs. We can sign or even start petitions and lead campaigns. And we can gather together in public to protest and ask for things to be done differently. Change comes when lots of people get together and push for it. So the first step for marine citizenship is to talk to friends and family and explain to them how important it is that we manage the ocean in a way that's sustainable so that we can meet our needs today and for future generations.
Hi there, my name's Ian Cook and I'm a neurodivergent professor working in the geography department at the University of Exeter. I've had ADHD and dyspraxia since I was a child, but I only found out when I was much older that this was the reason why I was so fidgety. I couldn't concentrate and my brain was buzzing with ideas. When I was doing the research that helped me to get a job in university, people sometimes said that I was a bit all over the place, like this was a bad thing. But geography is all about places. And my research was trying to find out how different people's lives in different parts of the world were connected. So being all over the place was actually a good thing. It helped me to think in a connected way. I've always been interested in things and how they work. And in my research, I wanted to find out who had made them, where in the world, and what their lives might be like. So who in China made this phone that I use? Who in Bangladesh sewed these clothes that I'm wearing? And then I'd wonder, well, who mined the metals that are in my phone? Where in the world, and what are their lives like? And where in the world was the cotton that makes my shirt grown? Who grew it? Who picked that cotton, and what are their lives like as well? And what impact did that mining and that farming have on the places where those people lived? Were forests torn down to make room for this industry? And did that industry pollute the land or the water supply or the atmosphere? And am I somehow responsible as a consumer of these things for those events happening elsewhere in the world, out of sight and out of mind to me? When people with ADHD are getting distracted, they're often in their own world, getting distracted like I am now, following tangents by some random thing that their teacher or their friends has said. But maybe that's a good thing. I'm following tangents all the time. I do what is called follow the thing research on phones and clothes and fruit and plenty more. And I think it's an advantage for me to be able to think in this connected way. And once you start to make all of these connections, you realise that you're not alone. There are thousands of people near and far who are helping us to be who we are, to live our lives, to keep in touch with our friends, to look smart, and much more than that. One thing that I ask my students to do is to think about the people who make their things. Find out a little bit more about the lives that they live and to make little Lego scenes with them. Where are the people who made my phone right now? Where are the people who grew my cotton in my shirt right now? What are they doing? And who's with them? People with ADHD have loads of ideas, and playing with Lego allows you to express them. And lots of people without ADHD also love playing with Lego. So here's a photograph of a Lego scene that I made of a young woman working on an iPhone production line in a factory in China. She's having her photo taken with one of the phones that she's checking. That's the photo on my phone. Someone found this photograph on their phone when they opened it and posted it online. And here's another scene that I made of someone looking in the mirror on Valentine's Day. They see in their reflection are the people who grew the flowers that they're giving to their loved one later that day. Imagine looking into the mirror and seeing the people who helped you to be yourself that day. So each of us is setting you a creative challenge that's inspired by our research on sustainability. My challenge is, can you make a Lego scene like this, picturing the people who make your stuff, someone somewhere doing something for you. When we choose and place minifigures like this in these scenes, it can help us to put ourselves in other people's shoes and to imagine what their work and their life and their environments might be like. You can take inspiration from the Lego that you have, but I'll also be bringing my Lego set to the university for everyone to play with. But if Lego isn't your thing, that's fine. There are plenty of other ways to think creatively like this. Draw or paint a scene. Make or play with a photograph. Write a letter or a poem. Make some music. Design a building. Make a model. Something that helps you to think about the people who made your stuff. The challenge is to imagine what an unsustainable world of production and consumption looks like and what it's like for the people involved. And it's also to imagine how those relationships might be different in a more sustainable world. So the creative task here is to make something to share your thoughts.